questions. So thank you for joining us for this Master Gardener event. We're very lucky to have Anita Rosen here, who's going to talk on how to replace your lawn. We do also have Louise Christie here, who's going to monitor the chat and keep an eye out for your questions. So if you do have any, please feel free to post them. We'll try and get to them as soon as possible. Also, the program will be recorded, and we will make the recording available afterwards. So keep an eye out for an email in the next few days, potentially by Friday. The slides will also be made available then. So I will contact you all after the event. Anita, if you wouldn't mind, if you'd like to get started.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you're all here for replacing your lawn. So let's see. My name's Anita Rosen, and I'm a Master Gardener. Master Gardener is a program out of University of California Cooperative Extension. I like to explain it to people that it's similar to 4-H for adults. So we don't have the animal piece, but we have the gardening piece. And our responsibility is to take UC-based information and bring it out to the general public. And so to get started with, one of the things that we need to know is, oops, my presentation has got a life of its own. So to get started with, we need to know what area we're in. And we're in a Mediterranean area. So you can see us over in California. And there's a few other areas in the world that have a very similar climate to ours, which are dry summers, relatively speaking, warm, wet winters, and Mediterranean, where the namesake Mediterranean climate comes from. But also there's an area in Chile, Western Cape of South Africa, and then a few sections in Australia. And when we're buying plants, we should be looking for plants, we're going to be talking about this, that are from these Mediterranean areas because they do really well in our climate. So in the US, there's typically about 2 different kinds of yards you can have. And one is a traditional yard, which we see on the right, and the other is a California yard that we see on the left. And the benefit of going with a California-based yard in California is it's a little bit more expensive for construction, not the hardscaping piece of it, but the plants are a little bit more expensive. California natives or natives to Mediterranean climate are a little bit more expensive than traditional plants, but you save a huge amount of money year after year in water use, in green waste, and in maintenance. So it's a little teeny bit upfront for a lot of saving over the life of your garden. And we'll talk about the details of this. So the first question I have for people, and if you can go over to the chat section, and to answer this question is, do you have a California or a traditional yard? And a traditional yard is your yard is probably about 80 to 90% grass. And California yard is you probably have 70 to 80% plantings with maybe a little teeny bit of grass or no grass. So how about if you guys go over to chat? And if anyone has any questions at this time, we've just started, so there's probably not too many questions. You can ask the question in chat and we'll get back to you. So get into your chat section and tell us whether or not you have a California, currently have a California or a traditional yard. And Louise?
It looks like, watching the chat, the vast majority have a traditional yard, traditional but dead with bad weeds, that kind of thing. Some of them have a California style yard. But I would say it's probably 80% traditional with dead grass or partly, obviously people
or weeds that are green right now because it's spring. And if you walk around your neighborhood, probably you'll see the same skew. Probably 70 to 80% of the yards are dead grass or barely living grass. and about 20 to 30% in your neighborhood are California. So part of our goal and the goal of the Santa Clara Water District is to move people to California because we're living in California. So I refer to those big grass lawns. We've only really had big grass lawns for the last century or so, the 20th century. Before that, the only people that had big grass lands were the aristocrats in Europe. And then the aristocrats that moved to the US wanted to then replicate those big grass lawns. Specifically, most of the big grass lawns were in England, which gets a lot of water. And then they moved back, to our country on the East Coast, which gets a lot of water. And then when we moved out west, everyone said, well, that's what a yard looks like, big grass. And it's terrible for our environment because we don't get lots of water. So one of the big issues we have right now is our love of turf. Everyone says, well, a yard should have grass in it. And I'm a mom and with a kid, and I watched her and her friends play in our yard, and they did not like sitting on the grass. It was scratchy and they didn't run around the grass that much. So it's not so much that you need to have grass in your yard. You might have a kid different than mine who played on the grass, but mostly what I find is we look at the grass. We think that's what it's supposed to look like. So why traditional lawns are bad is they use a huge amount of water for something we're not really using. I mean, I'm not talking about baseball diamonds, going over to the baseball field or the football field. I'm talking about in people's yards. Our mowers consume a huge amount of gas. We fertilize these lawns and it's all petroleum based, and then it gets into our water system. Our lawns, the US lawns annual carbon footprint is around 25 million tons. That's huge. They're also a monoculture. So it's a monoculture of a plant that is invasive to California, so it is not beneficial. And they create a wasteland for bugs and butterflies and bird populations. And as I already said, they're an invasive species. So then people say, well, I'm going to put on fake turf. In the picture behind my bullet points is a fake turf. People walk by and go, oh, look at that, looks so nice. It's nice and green. It's nice and green, but it's terrible. It retains heat. It's a real heat sink. And what we want to do in our yards is we don't want more heat. It's kind of like putting down cement and the entire yard is cement. And you're like, God, my house is so hot and my yard is so hot. Well, you're just putting down something that's rubber that looks like grass. So it's not environmentally friendly. It creates a heat sink because it's rubber. It creates water runoff. So one of the big issues that we have with so much paving is when we do get water, instead of the water getting back into our aqua filters, it runs off. It kills healthy soil bacteria, worms, and root systems. So you can see there, this one has this picture behind, has a tree. And that tree isn't getting if it was grass, there'd be all this water over the winter that percolated down to its roots. None of that water percolated to its roots because it just had a big green rubber mat covering all the dirt. It creates ant farms. It's toxic. And we've lost a third of the birds. We need bugs. We need a healthy infrastructure to be able to support the native animals in our areas. So then we have people say, wait, we can't use back east grass. We can't use fake grass. What can we use? Well, there's a really nice solution, native sod. And you can either buy native sod in plugs, which are pots, or you can buy native sod. You can just buy sod. So instead of buying East Coast sod, Kentucky bluegrass or some other type of sod that works really well in areas that get a lot of rain, you can buy sod that is made up of groupings. So it's usually not a monoculture. We'll usually put about 3 different types of grasses in the sod, or you can get pots. and you'll probably should mix about 3 different types of plants for your when you set it up if you're going to do it in pots. So one of the really nice benefits, and this is a picture behind my slide of a neighbor of mine who put in native sod. You only have to mow it twice a year. It uses 60 to 80% less water because our native grasses don't need as much water as East Coast and European grasses. You eliminate fertilizer. You never have to fertilize it. So it increases bird and butterfly populations, and it stores more carbon in its deeper root system. So you can have the look of grass without having, the East Coast grasses. You can get California native grasses. So it's a really nice solution if you're a grass lover. The other thing, so that's grass. That's one element of how do I replace my lawn? You can replace your lawn with lawn, and your lawn can be native, and now all of a sudden you have an environmentally friendly lawn that is much easier to take care of. Also, what people are doing is cutting down on the amount of lawn they have by using plants. And we're going to get into a lot of these techniques. And the benefit of drought tolerant gardens, or gardens that are using California natives or Mediterranean plants, is they use 83% less water than plants that are from the East Coast or Europe that are not Mediterranean. They generate 56% less green waste, and they require 68% less maintenance than putting in plants that are not Mediterranean or not California natives. And these numbers come from a 2020 Santa Clara Water District study. So talking about Santa Clara Water District, they have all kinds of rebates for putting in Mediterranean gardens or California gardens. So if you put in the plugs instead, if you put in sod, they don't have a rebate. If you put in plugs, which is just you buy plastic containers of plants and set them up in a grid system, there is a rebate for doing it for your garden. So if you go to valleywater.org, you can look at the list of what they'll give you rebates for, and it's hundreds of dollars that they'll give you rebates to pull out your mostly weed-filled grass and put in California natives. So here's a picture of a yard that doesn't even have any grass. So next question. I'm curious what people want. Option 1, do you want to maintain your dead grass or crabgrass for your yard? Are you looking at a mulched yard? And we'll get into what mulch is, but pretty much like bark chips on your yard. Do you want to have a well-watered green lawn, or do you want mulch, plants, and some lawn? So I'm interested what people's, not what you have right now, but what you're looking at doing. 1, 2, 3, or 4. So Louise, I'll pass it on to you to say what people are saying, what options they want.
4, 4, 4, 2. A lot of responses, mostly 4 but no lawn, a few 2s, a very few 3s. Looks like mostly 4s and 2s.
Great.
With mostly 4.
Great, great.
Option 2 with fruit and citrus trees. There's one.
Yeah, which would probably kind of option 2. So a mulched yard with, so option 4 without the lawn. Oops.
We have a few questions if you want to.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's take
some.
the questions. And then some of them I'm going to say, hold on, because I'm going to be talking about it.
Yeah. If I'll just ask them and you can tell me if you're going to move on. Can you walk on native sod?
Sure.
So they're safe for pets to play on?
Yeah. I have neighbors that have it, and they're not out there playing football or baseball on their front lawns, so I don't know how, but yes.
Can you plant native sod over existing grass, or do you have to remove the? Okay, you'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
And then, of course, where can you get it?
Okay, we'll get to that.
Okay, great.
Okay. So perfect lead-in questions. How do we get started? So this is a picture of a probably similar house in every neighborhood, maybe not with the stone, but you could see, I could walk around my neighborhood and take a few pictures of homes that have, it doesn't look so dead right now because, the weeds, the dandelions and everything are growing. And for those of you that have dandelions in your front yard, dandelions are an indicator plant. Dandelions like to grow in compact soil. So if your soil is really compact, that's where the dandelions are going to grow. And they take that big, they have that big deep root. They have that big deep root and they drill down because they also like soil that doesn't have a lot of calcium in it. So they drill down to where they can get some calcium and they bring it up to their leaves. And you might see an area that you had lots of dandelions, and if over a period of time you don't have dandelions anymore. And that's because the roots have broken up the soil. But in areas where you have dandelions all the time, that's because it's always compact, that soil. So if you have lots of dandelions, it's an indicator that you have compact soil. So just another little piece, if your lawn is all dandelions, your soil is compact. So we'll talk about that. So how do we get started? How do I take this dead lawn or lawn that doesn't look very nice, and how do I turn it into something that's nice? Well, the first thing you need to do is kill the lawn, or else you're going to start watering it. You're going to start doing things in the crabgrass. You might have at one point, maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago, your lawn was planted with, Kentucky bluegrass or some other East Coast grass. And over time, crabgrass has taken over, or dandelions have taken over, or something has taken over. And what we need to do is we need to start from scratch. And there's two ways to start from scratch. One way, the fast way or the slow way. And one way is you can hire some guy and they can come in with a machine and they'll just tear up all of your grass. And the other way is you can take either cardboard or like 3 or 4 sheets of newspaper and lay it down. So you just lay it down right on top of your grass, and then you cover the either newspaper or cardboard with mulch, which is pretty much the most popular mulch in the area is ground up trees. So you cover it with wood, probably about 4 inches of wood. You can do more, and it depends upon what time of year you do it. If you do it in July and we're having 105-degree days, your grass is going to die much sooner than if you do it in January when it's cooler. So it will take, a few weeks, 2 to 6 weeks for that grass underneath to die because it's not getting any sun, and it's not getting as much water because it takes a while for the paper to break down to send water, and you kill your lawn. And if you lifted it up, you'd find, oh, it's all really dead now. Because right now there's probably a lot of seeds. And what we want to do is kill all those seeds underneath there. So that's the first step, is we need to kill the lawn, either fast or slow. One of the things I recommend is that they pull up your sod, what you can do, your lawn, you can use that because a lot of times we want to build berms. So instead of paying to have them carted away, you can reuse all of the grass that you pull up, turn it upside down, and you can use it to build berms in your yard. So you can have some high points and some low points of interest for your garden. I did that. I took all the sod, turned it upside down, and used it to create the berms in my yard. So let's talk about mulch. So I just talked about bark chips, wood. You can pay for bark chips, or you can contact some of the different lawn companies or tree companies. And the tree companies, a lot of times, either your town or, I don't know about Sunnyvale. I live in Mountain View, and Mountain View will deliver bark chips, and they'll take the bark chips and they'll deliver them to your house, and now you get bark chips for free. So the different tree companies will also, they're always looking to get rid of it. You can't really decide what you're going to get because they'll just give you what you get. But the benefit of bark chips is it holds in water. It prevents weed growth. That's what mulch does. It reduces water evaporation. And the organic mulch, it also provides helpful bacteria for earthworms and fungi. So I have it in a lot of areas of my yard. I pulled out my lawn and I put down bark chips. And what's really amazes me is I'll come into my garden in July and I have about 4 inches of bark chips. And I'll dig down to the earth and it's still damp down there in July, months after the last rain. And that's how well bark chips can hold in water into your ground. So it's really beneficial that way. So the other thing I want to talk about is mulch and compost, because a lot of people get confused and use those terms interchangeably. Mulch doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it. It's typically just ground up trees. You can also get other kinds of mulch. Some people mulch with stones, or they can mulch with glass, or they can mulch with rubber. Personally, I don't want to have in my yard inorganic materials, because if I want to start planting, now you got to get rid of these inorganic materials if you decide you want to change your lawn. Where if you have bark chips, you just plant in the bark chips and you don't have to worry about ever getting rid of them. And it's cheap and it's easy and it works really well. So I'm a much more of a proponent personally of bark chips over inorganic materials for mulch. Compost has to have at least 40% of some kind of animal poop, because you need the nitrogen. So if you're going to the store to buy something, look to make sure it has at least 40%. Typically, it's going to be chicken or horse poop. And then people say, well, I have a worm bin. Well, now you're going to have worm poop. So there's some kind of animal. It's gone through the digestive system of some type of animal, and out the other end comes nitrogen. And that's what we want in our garden, because that's what plants want, is nitrogen. And you're not going to get nitrogen with just ground up trees. So be careful when you go and you buy something if you want mulch or if you want compost. And mulch is what you're going to spread over your entire lawn, and compost is what you're going to put around plants to provide nutrients to the plants. So mulch has a different purpose than compost. And it's really important to know the two and be able to identify when you go buying. If it doesn't say at least 40% of some kind of animal poop, you're not getting compost, you're getting mulch. So how to keep so the thought process in this slide is we get started. And so this summer, if you're looking at it right now, the worst time to plant California natives is right now. The best time to plant California natives is in the fall or the winter. So if you're getting started right now is a really good time to get started. But if you're planning on having a big party at your house and you want to show off how gorgeous your front lawn is, probably not going to happen this year if you're going to go with California's natives. What you want to start doing is you want to start solarizing your lawn, which is either putting down newsprint or cardboard and covering it with about 4 inches of bark chips. And what the other thing you should do is, in your yard, do you have plants that you like? So this is a yard, and you can see most of the yard is bark chips, but there's a tree, established tree, and established bushes. So what you should do is identify those areas with established trees and established bushes and make sure that you keep those. Which ones are you going to keep? If you don't like them, if you have some overgrown things, you can pull them out. If they don't fit into what you want to do for your yard, this is the time to pull them out. And the ones that you like, you keep. And that's what you're going to focus in on the first year, is what's established. And the rest of it, you can put bark chips. And I'll tell you, bark chips look 100 times nicer in a yard than crabgrass and weeds. So the next question I have is, will you be doing the work or will you hire a landscaper to do the work? And any questions, please put over in the chat.
I'm looking at what's coming through. It looks like Looks like about half and half, hire
Okay.
or do it themselves. And a few people would like to hire someone and then work with them, which would be really nice. Hire for the heavy
So-
work.
Yeah, yeah. So
We
We-
do have a bunch of questions.
yeah, so one thing that we will not, because we're part of UC, we can't give you names of gardeners or prices or any of that kind of information, but we can give you some tips on how to best handle the situation. So how about the questions?
Okay, so questions. A couple of people have asked about bark mulch and termites. I know a little bit about this, but you could go
Chris-
ahead.
Okay, Louise?
Yeah, termites are endemic to our area. They're already in your soil. So you can't assume that just because you put some bark down that the bark brought the termites in, because they're actually already everywhere. However, the way to prevent termites is to never ever let bark mulch or soil, for that matter, touch any wooden part of your house. So everybody should always make sure that they pull the mulch and the soil away from the edges of their house all around. So it's only contacting the cement foundation. So
And also
let's
to
see.
add to that, thank you, to add to that, don't ever have mulch touching the bark of your trees.
Right.
Because mulch holds in water. And just think about it, if you put on a glove that was wet, and that glove was wet for a week, well, for a human, a day, think of what shape your hand would be in at the end of a day with a wet glove. Well, if you put mulch right up to the bark of your tree, you're doing the same thing to a tree. That's their skin. And now you're putting this wet substance and you're going to have problems with your tree. So make sure that none of the mulch or compost or anything is touching the bark. Give it a little bit of room around all of the trunks of your plants, because you don't want the skin of the tree to get sick. Okay,
Yes.
continue, Louise.
A couple of people are interested in alternatives to bark mulch. One person is interested because of an allergy. Other people are interested because of the fire risk of bark mulch. If you live in a high fire area, what would be a good alternative to bark mulch? That's a really hard question because there's not much.
There's not much. You have to go to inorganic materials like stone. So a lot of people will use pebbles around their house. They'll use bark. I ride bikes around Los Altos Hills on the weekend, and I see a lot of the homes up there because they're in high fire damage area, high fire areas for high fire up there. And I see a lot of the homes will use inorganic materials close to the house to protect them. And then farther out, they use mulch, bark mulch. So you can use the exact same. If you're concerned about that, if you're in Sunnyvale, I believe is similar to Mountain View, that we are in low fire. PG&E were blue zones as opposed to like Los Altos Hills, which is a red zone for PG&E. So blue zones, you don't have there's not as much of fire issue if you're living down in where we are. If you're up in the hills, then you have to really be careful about that. And I would recommend an inorganic material like pebbles or whatever it is close to the house. Depends on how big your lot is.
Okay.
Farther away from the house, you'll have bark. You can use bark.
Do the bark chips, if you're using them, do bark chips break down over time?
Yes, they do. But it takes a long time. I have bark chips in my yard. I put them down about 6 years ago, and they still look nice. But when obviously the bigger pieces come to the top and the smaller pieces go to the bottom. And if I have to dig down to where the soil is, originally it was around 4 inches. Now it's around 3 inches of bark that I have there, maybe 2 inches of bark. When I get down to the bottom, it's a lot of broken up pieces of bark that they definitely do break down over time. You're not
One
gonna be
person asked
putting-
how,
Sorry.
oh, sorry. One person asked, how do we know that the bark that you have delivered or the mulch that you have delivered from the chippers is safe to use, that doesn't have pesticides or herbicides in it?
You don't, because you have no idea. You can ask them, but they probably don't have any idea. You're going to get what you get if you are not paying for it. If you go to one of the garden centers, they can give you some more information of what you're getting and where you're getting it from, because they buy it from whomever. So they probably can
I think in general, people have had pretty good experience with arbor
Yeah.
mulch that's free, right? I haven't heard a lot of people
haven't-
say they've had problems.
Right. I've never heard anyone say that they've had a problem. But if you're asking, how do I know? You don't. You can ask them, but you don't. But typically, you're getting it from trees that were taken down in your neighborhood. And it's typically trees and not too many, people can have pesticides on their grass, but how many people have pesticides in their trees?
Right. That's true.
So,
A good point.
So you're really not going, it's not really an issue, because what they're going to deliver is they took down 4 trees in your neighborhood, or they're doing some kind of building and had to take some time. There were some dead trees, and they, a third of the trees in the Bay Area have died because of our global warming. So there's a lot of dead trees that are being taken down, and those dead trees are being mulched up, and that's what you're getting, is a lot of the local dead trees. So you don't know, but that's the least of the issues, I would say, of if there's
Okay.
going to be pesticides.
And then just the last one, how often does the mulch need to be replaced or replenished?
Well, I've had mine for about 6 years, and it looks great. So I don't really know. Louise, do you know? Do you have any experience? I don't know anyone. that's had-
I'm interested in your talk because I don't have experience with
Oh.
this. So I don't have a lot of experience with wood mulch. I know it can last for a matter of years, but you do
Yes.
eventually need to add more.
Well, a lot of times what happens is, like I see with my yard, because I got rid of all of my grass and replaced it with mulch. And it still looks great, but you lose some. It breaks down, you lose some, you walk across it, you kick it off, animals walk across it, over time, it's kind of, like everything, it kind of spreads and you lose it. But I've had mine for 6 years, and it's not even a gleam in my eye of getting more. So I think you need, if you have 1 inch, you probably won't last very long, but you need to start off with about 4 or 5 inches, and then you should be fine for, I would say, 10 years. In 10 years, that's a long time.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly how many days. Any other questions?
I think we should probably move on. We've got a
Okay.
few, but I'll hold on to them.
So the next piece of this is, so we've talked about where we live and what kind of yard we should have. We're not going to talk about how to landscape your yard, but we'll talk about the different pieces that you need to know. And if you're going to hire someone or not. One of the pieces is, if you're going to hire someone, a lot of times they want to come in and, in 2 days give you instant garden. So you have to figure out is, maybe you don't want instant garden. Maybe you want them to get rid of your grass and set up structural. If there's any structural changes that you want to make. And I mean structural changes, do you want to be adding a patio? Do you want to be adding a new walkway? Adding all of those pieces in, just having mulch right now, and then having them come back. If you're going to go with a more Mediterranean or a California native, have them come in the fall to do the plantings, because that's when you want to plant. So really have a conversation with them, going in there with more knowledge instead of trying to plant, because the plants that go in at this time of year are East Coast and European plants. They're not California natives. So you're not going to be planting California natives in May. We're almost in May, June timeframe. You're going to be planting California natives in October, November. So consider having a 2-phase project if you're looking at doing it. One is pulling out your lawn, putting down the mulch, laying out what you want, and then in the fall, planting. And then you plant. When you plant, if you've used the either newsprint or cardboard, you just punch a hole in the newsprint or the cardboard to put your plant in. You never pull it up. It eventually will decompose. So the next piece of it to continue on is know your yard. I talk to a lot of people and I ask them, well, which direction is it? You know, they're like, well, what should I plant? And it's like, where is your sun? So, you know, what you need to do, this little picture that I drew up here took me obviously about 5 minutes. So you can see the brown rectangle in the middle is the house. And the gray is where your hardscape is. So driveway, walkway to the front door, back patio. So you're not planting anything. The rest of it is your yard. So what you need to do is, where's the east and where's the west? Because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. The next thing you need to do is identify where are the big trees, because they create a lot of shade. So just lay out where your trees are. So you can see I put 2 trees, one in the front west and one in the back east. And then what I recommend that you do, and this whole entire thing shouldn't take more than a half an hour one day. You don't have to use PowerPoint to draw it out. You can just draw it out on a sheet of paper, but you should know your yard. And go out into your yard for about 5 minutes in the morning, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and see where it's sunny and mark where it's sunny. Now, I pretty much can guarantee that the east half of your backyard is probably shady in the morning because the sun is rising in the east and it's hitting that tree, and you're not getting any sun in the east half of your yard, where the west half of your yard probably is sunny in the morning. And the opposite in the front part of your yard. The east part of the front yard is probably sunny. And I don't know how sunny it is on the west part because you have another tree. So you need to know where your trees are. Where is it sunny and where is it shady? At 9 o'clock in the morning, and then go out around noon. Now, that going out, you're not spending hours. You just go out and look in your yard and go, where is it sunny? Where is it shady? And you look in the front yard. Where is it sunny? Where is it shady? You do it again at noon. Where is it sunny? Where is it shady? And then you do it again around 6 p.m. at night. And now you know where you have morning sun, midday sun, and evening sun, and same thing with shade, because that's what you want to know. Because if you like, you love hydrangeas. Hydrangeas hate morning sun and love evening sun. So you probably would want to put hydrangeas in an area that would be in the backyard on the east near that big tree, because that tree is going to block the sun in the morning and the sun is going to come over into your yard in the evening. So when you go to the store to buy plants, it's going to say it likes all day long sun. So you can see maybe the center of your backyard gets all day long sun. And you might have a fence along your east side. So the side yard in the morning is shady because of your fence. And so what you need to see is, where is it shady? Where is it sunny? So the next thing you do is map out, and that's something you can do right now, is map out your yard. Where is it shady? Where is it sunny? So you know what to plant, because you plant a plant in the wrong place and it won't grow. You plant a plant in the right place and it will thrive. So we need to know where it's going to thrive. And when you walk into the nursery, the first thing they're going to ask is, what's your yard like? And if you have this little picture, well, it's sunny here, it's shady here. And what time of day? They're not looking at 10 p.m. or they're not looking at 10 a.m. They're looking at morning, daytime, afternoon, late afternoon. They'll point you to the right plants. You go to any of the local nurseries and they're going to have professionals there that can point you to the right plants for the right time of day. So that's just a little, you don't need to have a professional come in and do this basic mapping. It's something that, it's your yard, you should get to know it a little bit. Also, you should know where your sun is, because in the summer, your sun is going to be in a different place than the winter. So if you're looking at plants, what type for the plants, you shouldn't be mapping it out in the winter when most of the growing season is in the summer. But if you want plants to you want to have a year-round garden. So you want to have plants that are flowering in February, January, February. No, you're going to have to walk out in January, February in the winter and know where your sun is, because it's going to be in a different place than in the summer. So that gets to right plant, right place. So if you know what the sun is doing in your yard, then you'll know what is the right plant and what's the right place for that plant. And then your plants will thrive. One of my neighbors was complaining they had their yard landscaped, and they're like, they put in all of these plants and they died. And it was right by a big tree. And on one side of the tree, all the plants were thriving. And on the other side of the tree, all the plants weren't thriving. And I said, that's because you have a tree here. And these plants aren't getting sun because it's all being blocked. So the gardener put in the same plants on both sides of the tree, and they were doing great on one side and not great on the other. And he goes, I think he had said to me, I think my sprinkler system is dead. And I said, I think your tree is blocking the sun. So it really helps if you have mapped it out, your yard. The next thing is called water budgeting. So we talked about right plant, right place. The other thing that we need to look at is what's called water budgeting, which is if you're going to be doing California natives, they need watering the first 2 years. And then once they're established, once their root system is established, they don't need to be watered anymore. You can just turn off your watering. Where if you put in like a hydrangea that is not a California native or a Mediterranean plant, and they're going to need watering all the time. So that's the other thing is, one, you need to know where the plant should be. The other piece you should know is it a plant that needs lots of watering, or is it a plant that needs little watering? And if it's a plant that needs lots of watering, put all your heavy watering plants together and put all your California natives together and put all your succulents together, because they all need similar type watering. So not only do we have to figure out what kind of sun a plant likes, we also should figure out how much water that they need so we can put similar plants together. So that's called water zones. So you've mapped out your yard, and now you can figure out also where I want to do a lot of watering. And you can see that high water use is probably grass. Looks like a pool, probably uses as much water as a pool. And if we used California natives, then it wouldn't be high water use. It would be low water use if you used your green lawn is California natives. The other thing is, when you're looking at plants is, identify how big the plant is going to be mature. That's one of the big issues I know with myself. I have a really big thyme bush, huge bush, that's thyme. I bought it and it was about 2 inches big when I bought it at the nursery. And you sit there and say, oh gosh, I have all of this space. And there was this little 2-3 inch plant that I put in, and it was all by itself on the side of my house. And it looked so lonely. And it really was a lot for me not to put a lot of other plants next to it, because it looked so lonely. And it only took a couple years for it to become a big bush. It loved where I planted it. So you have to also think about how big this plant is going to be. When you go to the nursery, they'll tell you how high it's going to be. And so many times we plant plants that they say they're going to be 5 feet tall. Well, I'm 5'4". So that's a plant my size. Do you want to have a plant your size sitting right in front of your living room window? You know, like, would you want to have a bunch of people standing right in front of your, blocking the sun type? It's a people-sized plant, as opposed to a plant that maybe in front of your window, you only want to have something that grows 2 or 3 feet high, so it doesn't block all the sun for your window. So that's another consideration when you're having buying plants, is making sure that the size that it's going to be isn't going to be overwhelming for the space. And then talking about that is our trees. So one of the issues that we talk about these days is climate positive design. And climate positive design means what we want to do is we want to get away from heat sinks, and we want to create areas where water can flow back into the aquifilter of our for Santa Clara County. And one of the best ways to cool down houses and cool down yards are trees. One of the best. The best way to keep your house cool, to keep your land cool, is to have a big tree. So you really should consider having a big tree. And you don't have to start by planting a big tree. You can plant a little tree that's going to grow big. And now all of a sudden you have this beautiful big green tree that can really cool down your yard. And climate positive design is keeping our trees, because they can really make a huge difference in our yard. They make them much cooler. And privacy, there's all kinds of benefits of trees. So question, have you mapped your yard? Do you already have one? I say today or for the future, or have I convinced you to go home, or maybe you are home right now? Have I convinced you to sit down and map out, really simple, map out your yard and figure out where the sun is and where the shade is in your yard at 3 different times of day? So I'm curious to see, has anyone mapped out their yard? They know where east and they know where west is, and they figured out what time of year or what time of day their yard is sunny and shady.
Actually, it looks like the people who are answering, most of them have done it.
Oh, yay.
Now the no's are coming in. Okay, so the people who already had a map were proud. But yes, quite a few people have already mapped their yard, it looks like, although there are some no's. One thing that somebody pointed out, I think his name was David, is that you can use Google Maps satellite view and print out a map of your property, even a small suburban lot. I've done it also, and it's really fantastic. There's a lot of interesting options with Google Maps, so it might be good to Google that if you want to find out more about using Google Maps to map your yard.
That's a great suggestion.
We do have some questions.
Okay.
Let's see. One good one is, at what stage of the project do you want to install a new dripper system or any irrigation? Will you get to that?
Before you start putting any plants in. I'm not really going to get that. I don't go into drip irrigation in this talk, but I would lay out the drip. If you don't have any of the plumbing put in for a drip irrigation, I would do that at the very beginning, because you're going to have to tear things up. So before I even solarized, I would have someone come out and lay it out. Now, where the emitters are going to be, which means you have to have a plan of what you're going to do for your yard.
So you would want to do that before you even kill the lawn.
Well, because now you're going to have to, if you wait until after you kill the lawn, now you're going to have to tear up where you have killed you've already put the bark chips down. Now you're moving bark chips. So it's just so much easier if they tear up the lawn, because you don't care they're tearing up the lawn. You're going to be covering it all up with bark chips.
Do you need to remove the old sprinkler system?
Well, do you need to put in a new one? That's the question. I don't know if you don't have a sprinkler system, this would be the time to put one in. I would say before you kill your lawn, I hope you have a plan of what you're going to be putting in. If you don't have a plan and you just want to start off by killing your lawn, you could do that. It's not like it's going to be more expensive to tear it up with the bark chips. You might say, well, I just want to start right now. I'm going to kill my lawn. I'm going to get bark chips, and then I'm going to hire someone. And I'll tell you, it's really hard right now to hire someone, because this is the busiest time of year for landscape designers, because everyone is thinking, oh, my yard. So you might want to just start by killing off your lawn and pulling out things that are dead in your lawn. And then when landscape designers, if you need a landscape designer, when a landscape designer becomes available, at least they're starting with a clean slate. It's not going to cost you more to put in a sprinkler system if you've just put mulch down. It's just that the easiest thing to do if you're going to tear up your lawn is to tear it up first.
Mm.
Did I lose anyone on that thought process?
Not too bad.
Okay.
It's a little complicated.
It's a little, it's really hard for me to say when I don't even know, I don't know what your yard is or your situation. But
Someone just commented that plans always change. It's easy to move the bark chips and put your drip lines down once they're, you can always change things.
Right.
I think that's the point you were making.
right. The first thing you want to do is have a plan. If you don't have a plan and you say, I just need to do something to get started, and the thing that you're going to do to get started before you have a plan is to just, put down the cardboard and the bark chips, that's fine.
Here's a
Because it's not
question.
expensive to pull that up.
Why can you just not water the lawn and let it die and then mulch? Why do you need the cardboard?
Because you think it's dead and it's not really dead. There's a lot of seeds in there.
And the purpose of the cardboard is to exclude light,
Right,
because that will actually kill.
right. That will
Right.
kill it all.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to kill the old stuff. And then when you put the bark chips on top, so that's what you're doing. And then when you want to plant, you need to punch a hole in the cardboard to plant.
Okay. Julie points out, if people are going to apply for rebates from the water district, don't rip out your lawn until you've gotten approved for the rebate.
Oh, really good point. Really good point. So the process for getting the rebate is you go over there, they'll tell you what the process is. I've done it. I did it 6 years ago when I replaced my yard, and you had to take a picture of it beforehand and then show them the plan of what you are going to do. It doesn't have to be a professionally drawn plan, but you have to have some kind of plan to show them, this is what I currently have. This is what I'm going to do, with a list of what you're going to plant with. So like California natives, you have to have a list. They're not so concerned that you, instead of, there's like 6 different types of, you're going to put grasses, native grasses, and you said you're going to put grass A and you put in grass B. That's not what they're concerned about if you do a couple different plants. They just want to have an idea of what you're planning on doing. Like you're doing California natives. So, there might be only certain ones available in the fall when you want to do it, not the ones you initially thought. They don't micromanage at that level. They're trying to get an idea of what you're doing so that you currently have. So you show them what you currently have and you show them what you're planning on doing. And then when you actually do it, you take a picture of your yard and you send it to them and you get the money. And it was really easy. I did it. It was surprisingly easy.
Someone asks, what about the fact that the water district requires you to complete the project within 90 days?
I can't speak to that. I don't know the details. I
think that's something you would have to just deal with.
Yeah.
If that's what they require.
Right. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't work for, I'm not involved with the water district, so I don't know exactly how they're managing it.
Okay, I think we could probably move on.
Okay. So some of the benefits of going native. So we kind of push, instead of going just Mediterranean, going California native it's beautiful. There's a bunch of native gardens. There's in Sunnyvale, I don't know how many people on here are from Sunnyvale. There's a couple of different native gardens in Sunnyvale. The Master Gardeners has a native garden, so you can really see what the plants look like. And you can have some beautiful, beautiful gardens with native Californians. This is the time of year you want to look at California natives because they're all in bloom. And it's also wonderful for the birds and the bees and the butterflies. they're all really happy when you do California native because that's their habitat. There's also the Going Native Garden Tour. So maybe I think in the next one I have a link to what that is. Across Santa Clara County, we have what's going to be coming up pretty soon is the Going Native Garden Tour. And in non-pandemic times, the garden tour, you actually go to gardens. There's a map and you can actually go to people's houses and walk around their garden. Right now, the benefit is they have it online. So you can have online, you can go and see videos and pictures of people's gardens that are doing natives. And there are some yards that are just amazing what they have done. They're beautiful, beautiful yards. And that's completely for inspiration. So inspirationally, this is what you could be looking at is locals, what locals are doing. And you can really, what's nice is to find people in your neighborhood that have natives. So you can see what they're doing in your neighborhood. So, so we're going to get a little into some of the different choices. So native grasses. Here's a couple of different types of native grasses and what they look like. I showed you one earlier with what my neighbor had. You can get native grasses that need to be mowed, and they're not going to be that much better when it comes to, if you want to have a mowed lawn, it's going to use a lot of water. If you're willing to have a lawn that only gets mowed twice a year, it will be a little bit longer and it won't use as much water. So you can have native grasses that can be mowed. There are some native grasses, but understand you're not going to get that water savings if you're going to mow your lawn, because mowed lawns need to be watered. And this gives you two different views of the same type of grass, one mowed and one unmowed. And they're also showing there's different grasses depending on what you want. I am by far not an expert or not very knowledgeable on which of the different grasses you should have for which situation. So we just have some pictures here that a different master gardener who's much more knowledgeable on the grasses put together on which grasses you need for which situation. So if you need if you're going to have a lot of foot traffic, then you should get probably the yarrow. If you want more of a meadow effect, there's different grasses that you're going to choose. And ground covers, thyme. And here's some inspirational pictures of what it can look like if you use natives. Ceananthus right now is in bloom. So if you walk around your neighborhood and you see these big, beautiful bushes with the blue flowers, that's Ceananthus, which is a California native. And there's a bunch of different considerations if you're looking for drought-tolerant plants. Sun exposure we talked about, the water needs, the size, the maintenance needs. The California natives do not want you to touch them. They're very, very happy growing, and you don't have to do anything. That's what's really wonderful about them. You plant them, they look beautiful, and you don't need to take care of them. There's no deadheading.
You do need to water them, especially when they're getting established.
Yes, the first 2 years you need to water them. And once they're established, you don't really need to do so much. So there's a bunch of water-wise ornamental plants. So I'm a flower girl. I love flowers in my garden. My garden right now is a sea of flowers. Lots of California poppies, but then all kinds of other flowers are currently there. But there's a lot, these are all the different Mediterraneans. And you can see there's a wide variety of shapes and sizes and colors. What's a great resource is UC Davis Arboretum All-Stars. So I believe there's 100 on the All-Star list. Is that right, Louise?
It might be more than that. And they also have a native all-stars list. So,
And so
it's
that's
great.
a great resource. I have used that resource. So if you're thinking about what you want, and what you can do when you're starting to map out is say, morning sun about 4 feet high, or morning sun and I only want to go 3 feet high. And then you go over to the UC Davis All-Star list and see what plants like morning sun and grow to about 3 feet high. And now all of a sudden you have a short list and you can choose which one you want. And so it's a great way if you're doing it yourself. If you're going to hire someone, then it's nice to be able to have this conversation with them, and they probably have all of these lists memorized. They know what plants. Another good resource for plants is East Bay Mud. They have on their website, summerdry.com, they have lots of recommendations. They came out, I had their book about 10, 15 years ago. They came out with a plant book, which was fantastic, the East Bay Mud. I used that for years on choosing plants. I'm sure they've updated it. I have not updated my version of it, but when I was doing my yard work, I loved their the book they had. At the time, they didn't have a very good website. I am sure now they have a much better website, but the East Bay Mud is a great resource. California Plant Society is another really good resource. They'll give you a bunch of different designs that you can start off with. When you say, I don't know where to start, you can go there to start. This is for the planting on, like here they have neat low care design for a sunny front yard. So they'll have different types of yards and they'll tell you what you should plant and where you should plant it. So they'll give you a starting point if you're planning on doing it yourself. And then the Santa Clara Water District is another fantastic resource. And they have virtual tours, and in their virtual tours, what this shows, you can go over to different points in the on the page, and it will explain what those plants are. So you can get an idea of if you're looking for planting lists. Green Gardeners Healthy Creeks is another resource, and they show you really this is a professional level planting guide. So if you're hiring someone to come in to give you a design, this is what they're going to have. They will give you something this detailed. And another resource, which they show you, what to do, what kind of drainage, what kind of issues, large shrubs, large trees. And Sunset's a really good resource, which will has all kinds of information on plantings. And then we just now have some inspirational pictures. So you can see these are pictures taken. This is from Sunset Magazine, but I believe these are all taken in California, and a lot of them are taken in our area. And you can see the one on the left, people were saying, what about mulch? Personally, I don't like inorganic. I prefer organic mulch, but look at this with the pebbles. Look how, or gravel, look how nice that is. And so some more inspiration. A lot of people are doing succulents. Succulents, they just grow. You don't have to do anything for succulents. And here's some examples for if you have full sun and your summer is dry, you can have, most California natives will not be flowering in the summer. Their big flowering season is February to about June. And here's just some different choices for perennials and grasses. I'm not going to go into each of the different plants. I'm, first of all, not that knowledgeable on each of the different plants. Also, a lot of plants like thyme, oregano, lavender that we want to have in our herb gardens are Mediterranean plants. So, you know, that's really nice. You can create a kitchen garden out of Mediterranean plants. I have all of those in my side yard. I don't water them very much at all. They get huge, the thyme, oregano, lavender, they get a huge amount of sun and they thrive. And also a lot of it, you can have soft borders, you know, if you like more of a English country looking, you can do that with California natives. And also the decomposed granite, where you can see the permeable patio. That's also something that's very popular. And that's it. That's the class. So any other questions?
Yeah, we have a few more questions. Somebody asked, what is Ecolon? Can you clear up what that is again? It's a brand, isn't it? Ecolon?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of grasses that is promoted by, it might be Delta Bluegrass. Oh,
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't mention that, but you could certainly Google Ecolon.
Yeah, and if you go to a site like Delta Bluegrass, and there's other companies that provide sod, all the companies that provide sod, all the companies that provide grass also provide, they all are providing sod or grass in California natives. You can get your Kentucky bluegrass and you can get your California natives, and they'll have different mixes depending on what your needs are.
A question is about shade tolerant California natives. There are shade tolerant California natives,
Oh, sure.
right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there are a lot of them. Don't ask me their names, but yes, there are a lot of them.
There are a lot. I have several in my own front yard.
Yeah.
So a good nursery that has native plants will be able to point out the shade ones. And in fact, that Palo Alto nursery, the Summer Winds in Palo Alto, has a woman who knows a lot about natives, and she has a good shade section. Although we're not supposed to promote specific nurseries, so I didn't really say that. Okay. A question about gorilla hair. Is gorilla hair or leaves a good substitute for bark mulch?
You can use gorilla hair and you can use leaves. One of the things about leaves in our area is earthworms are an invasive species to the Americas. Earthworms aren't indigenous to North and South America. So we do like them, and they were brought over by the Europeans, and we need them in our gardens because a lot of our gardens aren't indigenous plants, like especially if you're growing a kitchen garden. But one of the things that California native plants, native trees like is the leaves all fall, and they don't. In Europe, the earthworms go into the forest and break up all the leaves. In California, there aren't earthworms in North America. So when earthworms get into our forest, they cause havoc because all of those castings don't help our trees. Our trees, California native trees, don't want those kind of castings. What they want are their leaves to fall at their feet and to mulch. So mulching with leaves is really beneficial if you're doing a California native garden.
Interesting. There's a couple questions about planting next to the house foundation. Will that promote termites or other dangers to the house? I don't know if you feel comfortable answering that.
I don't know how comfortable I feel, but I don't think planting next to it is going to have termite. I think the issue that you have is you just don't want to put the mulch against your house.
Right. The key thing about, I've had a lot of people ask about termites. The most important thing about termites is just to keep the bark and mulch and the soil away from the wood of your house. You can have plants there, but they shouldn't, you just don't want any dirt up against the wood of the house. Another question is, someone says, will mulch attract roaches or rodents or other animals like that?
Yeah, no,
No.
I haven't had any problems with it. I haven't heard of anyone having problems with it. The rats, there's nothing in mulch that they want.
Right. They don't eat it.
They don't eat it. They don't burrow in it. They have zero interest in it.
Somebody asks, if their soil is compacted, do they need to have more extensive prep of the soil before planting the natives, besides just digging a hole?
Oh, well, the natives have deep roots, so it's amazing. One of the things that I did is I have in front of my house, I have I live in what used to be unincorporated Mountain View. And so we're one of the few areas in Mountain View that we don't have a sidewalk in front of our house. So it was just a driving strip and there was a wall, and I took down the wall, and then it was terrible, terrible. Just think about how terrible Earth is that's been a driving strip that people have parked their cars and driven over and dropped stuff off on. And I wanted to take that over for my garden. So all I did was take a bunch of stones to delineate where the end of my garden is. I took 2 inches of really good quality compost, not mulch, compost. So it has to have some kind of animal poop in it so that you have the nitrogen. Put it down in that area and then dug. It was really, really hard, holes in to be able to plant the flowers. And that compost on top seeps down into the earth and gave the nutrients to the plants. So when you say, I have really compacted soil, it's compacted because there's no nutrients to it. It's compacted because people have been walking on it or cars have been driving on it. You can change the nature of your soil by putting really nice quality compost on top.
Yes.
And now it's no longer, so it was super easy to do. I just delineated a spot so people didn't drive their car on it anymore and put compost on, and I was able to plant. The big tip for planting is plants don't like to change soil. So you bring the plant back from the, even if you have really, really much better soil than the plant was in, they don't like to change the soil they're in. So you come back from the nursery with a plant and it was in one kind of soil, and now you want to put it into your garden, which is a different kind of soil. The plant doesn't like to leave the soil that it's in. So when you take the plant out of the plastic container, get the soil out from the roots. So shake it a bit so the soil falls off of the roots, and then plant it into your earth with just the roots and the native earth, and put the native earth around the plant. And then those roots will be happy because it will stay within the same soil. Did I lose anyone on that one?
No, I think that's it. It's a good thing to emphasize is that a lot of us were trained to amend the soil when we plant shrubs and trees and things, but that's really been debunked. And like you say, we should plant permanent plants or semi-permanent plants in the native soil and not amend. It's just
what
then
you
you
wanna
put
do-
compost on top.
Right. You don't want to rototill. And you can see we never talked about rototilling. Rototilling is like the worst thing you can do to your garden. I've heard people say, oh, well, I need to get rid of the grass, so I'm going to rototill. Don't rototill, because there's a fungus that's in our soil. All over the world, there's a fungus, and plants connect to this fungus, and it's a symbiotic relationship. They get 60% more water when they connect to this fungus, and they give the fungus chlorophyll that they get from, because they're in the sun. So these two, it's a symbiotic relationship. If you rototill, you break up this fungus that's found within the soil, and it takes about 5 years for it to rebuild. So you're really hampering your plant's ability to get water by 60%. So what you want to do is you don't want to rototill. You just want to dig a hole that's big enough to be able to get those roots in. So
Right.
when you take off all the dirt that you get from the nursery, look at to see how big is that root ball, and you want to dig a hole big enough for that root ball. And you don't want to put nice good stuff at the bottom of that. Like people are like, oh, put nice mulch at the bottom of the hole. No, put the mulch on the top. You want to put, not mulch, sorry, compost. You want to put nice quality compost around the plant, not touching the bark, but every place else. And what happens is all those good nutrients percolate down to the roots. And that's the best way to feed a plant, is really nice quality compost around the plant so that it gets down to the roots.
That's right. That's the best way to do it. We have one, maybe we should just take one more question.
Sure.
Someone asks, at the beginning, you said you could get rid of the grass either slow or fast, with
Right.
fast being the professional way. Would a professional come in with a chemical lawn tiller and a rototiller? I
Well,
think
I
they
wouldn't
would.
hire them if they did that.
No, I think they would use a turf removing machine,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, that's exactly what the picture showed, is they have this little machine that comes in and just cuts off all the turf. Because the East Coast grass and the European grasses do not have deep roots. So they only go a few inches down and they cut off all of the roots.
Right, right.
And then what it is that's really, instead of having them, I think I said it before, instead of having them truck out and pay for all of that stuff to be trucked out, if you're going to have berms, have them flip it. So the roots are up, because it's going to kill the plant. If the roots are down, it's going to, you'll have grass again. If you flip it and the roots are up, you'll kill the plant. And now you can use that for fill in your yard, because you want to create some berms in your yard. So if they're going to pull out the grass, you can have them flip it and then use that as fill within your own yard.
Great. Well, I think we probably should wrap up.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Great talk.
Thank you very much for all of the people for coming to this.
We have,
Thank you, Anita.
Yes, our goal is to have healthier yards and a healthier ecosystem, and not spend as much money on water for our yards.
Okay, yeah, so thank you for the talk. Really very interesting, and I hope there are a few people at least are inspired to go and make the switch.
Yeah.
Or have already been inspired and now feel they have the means to do so. To everyone in the chat, thank you for coming. I will be sending out a follow-up email after this, so in the next few days. Just keep an eye out for that. It'll include the link to the YouTube recording as well as a copy of the slides. But then to Anita and Louise, thank you so much again for a wonderful program.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.